All right, it looks like we're at time, so let's go ahead and get started with today's webcast. My name is Chin and I'm with NACVA and the Consultants Training Institute. Before we get started with May 18th around the Valuation World, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, to obtain CP credit, you must answer all the poll questions that pop up on your screen during today's webcast. If you have an AVW subscription, you'll receive the CP certificate within 7 to 10 business days from today's webcast. If you have any questions today during the webcast, please use the Q&A feature as well as be directed to the presenters. If you have any questions about NACVA or any technical questions, please feel free to reach out to me through the chat feature and I'll be happy to address those for you. With AVW and the AVW International Webcasts, we'd like to cover all the hot topics in the industry to make sure you stay abreast with all the information. With the limited time that we have, we can't go over all of the information that is available. So we do have links in the slides where you can click on to read more information about some of the upcoming hot topics in the industry. This is our Around the Valuation World team. We have Mel and Alina joining us today as our hosts. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mel, who will get us started with the presentation today.
Thank you, Jinder. Welcome everyone to May. I can't believe Memorial Day is around the corner. So we've got a great program for you today. We're going to start off with, crowd favorite, Janae Castell, industry headlines, updates, things that we should be aware of and look deeper into. Then Dimitri, Yimga, and Greg Endicott are going to have a conversation around valuation in the era of AI and how to navigate that. Then we're going to bring in James Ewart, who's going to talk a bit more about standards in AI and similar technologies. And then Alan Zipp is going to spend some time with the honorable judges talking about what motivates the judges to actually help us do the things that we do. And then we'll bring in Chuck Persing, who's going to spend some time talking about some current developments in standards. And we'll close it off with how to use AI agents to scale your practice without scaling a team with Colin Brown and Alina Rivera. So with that, I'm going to bring on Janae Castell for our first session. And she's going to go into industry updates and things that we should be looking deeper into. And I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Mel. Okay, another full month this month. Okay, our first article, The Effect of Macroeconomic Uncertainty on Business Valuation. This was from Willamette Perspectives in April. We have another article. There are actually two articles that I wanted to share with you from the Willamette Perspectives. The second one is Vetting Management Projections, Best Practices and Insights. We also have a couple of articles from our quick read. Are we taking our net working capital calculations seriously enough? And the bankability method, ensuring SBA 7A financing success to close a small business sale. Finally, 3 articles from the BV Wire. SaaS multiples slide as growth slows and AI concerns mount. New EBSA, EBSA guidelines signal a safer landscape for ESOP valuations. And 280E relief emerges for cannabis firms, but not across the board. So the objectives, main takeaways for you to get from this month's update are to adjust assumptions and methodologies to produce credible and defensible valuation conclusions amid ongoing uncertainty. Willamette article outlines a structure for due diligence on client-provided projections, and von Helfenstein argues net working capital deserves more attention than it typically receives given the valuation risk it represents. Is the bankability method a tool you should add to your sanity check toolkit? Software as a service multiples and growth are down. ESOP valuations may not be as scary as we started to think they were. And a new layer of complexity may be entering cannabis valuation. So the first article on macroeconomic uncertainty, this is driven, you probably all are aware of it, at least you should be aware of it, by persistent inflation, interest rate volatility, tariff pressures, government shutdown-related data gaps, and geopolitical risk. This has reached historically high levels and is adding complexity to business valuations. We've got several uncertainty measures, which are tracked by the Fed, that have spiked in recent years. Higher inflation and interest rate volatility raise the risk-free rate and equity risk premiums, increasing our cost of capital. which all else
If
equal
you need
reduces the
anything,
present
please let me
value of
know,
future
and I
cash flows.
appreciate
This is just a mechanical flow of BV. If tariff-related risks are already embedded in your reduced cash flow projections that either you've provided or management have provided, they should not also be added to the discount rate. Conversely, if you have not incorporated those risks into the cash flows as uncertain or unquantified risk in your cash flows, a discount rate adjustment may be very appropriate. In uncertain environments, use rolling forecasts, expanded sensitivity ranges, scenario modeling, and full documentation of assumptions. These aren't just best practices, they're what the author argues you're required to do to maintain defensible, credible valuation conclusions according to our various valuation standards. So a good article with a few tips on maybe what to do, how this looks. Vetting management projections, another good article, just kind of thinking about these things that we are continually dealing with in business valuation. Management projections have been heavily criticized, especially in recent years in the Delaware Chancery Court opinions. The process, the author argues, behind the projections matters as much as the projections themselves. Courts favor projections prepared in the normal course of business through a robust multi-person process and created specifically for rather than those specifically created for litigation. In an ideal world, right? Analysts should ask detailed questions about who prepared them, why, and how. Also, comparing prior projections to actual results is a powerful diagnostic tool if you're not already looking at it that way. There was an example in the article. Management may be reasonably accurate on revenue, but consistently misses EBITDA by maybe double-digit percentages, a pattern that should be investigated and may guide your adjustments. When adjustments are needed, the author says there are two defensible paths. Analysts can either adjust the projections directly, say downward, if management is consistently over-optimistic. This requires explicit support. Or the analyst can embed projection risk through a higher, you guessed it, discount rate or lower market multiple. Now, are we taking our net working capital calculations seriously enough? In today's environment with supply shocks and inflation, net working capital deserves far more analytical rigor than it typically receives. The article walks through the proper formula for net working capital. It discusses working capital as an accounting equation, but then also discusses net working capital excluding some items that the accounting working capital includes: cash and debt, and marketable securities, anything that's used or considered a financing asset. So those are left out of many net working capital calculations. There's some different calculations that von Helfenstein goes through. Net working capital charges are counterintuitive and often misunderstood. So make sure that you understand them and you understand increases in net working capital and how that impacts the available cash flows. Analysts who don't fully grasp this dynamic risk misinterpreting company risk and misadjusting forecasted cash flows. No single forecasting technique fits every situation. The 5 revenue-based techniques in the article, plus others not discussed, can produce widely different results for the same company, as shown in a table in the article. The best choice depends on company stage, historical volatility, and whether net working capital is trending up or down, and the analyst must be able to defend that choice. So analysts should have a baseline understanding of the subject's business cycle, cash conversion cycle, and working capital requirements before selecting any forecasting method. It's a great article, good for you to look in if you're not digging into your net working capital projections. The bankability method. The article introduces Terry Lammer's bankability method. He says for small and some medium-sized businesses, if a business isn't bankable or the value isn't bankable, meaning a buyer can't finance it under realistic SBA lending terms, the deal will almost certainly fall apart regardless of what the valuation is. Overvaluation, he says, is a disservice, not a favor. Inflated valuations tend to anchor sellers to unrealistic numbers, making deals unfeasible, or perhaps leading to bad deals that end up happening and then falling apart after. The article gives a real example where a $15 million valuation versus a more realistic $5 million valuation caused a willing buyer, maybe it was buyer to lose financing and the business to never sell. The author highlights how EBITDA alone is misleading and says true cash is what matters. Principal debt payments don't appear on the income statement or in EBITDA or earnings, so business can look profitable while generating little or no actual cash. So understanding true cash flow is critical to assessing whether a leverage deal is sustainable. The bankability method is designed to bridge the gap between theoretical value and executable transactions. This could be a good sanity check for your valuations. Now on to our SaaS multiples. A new report from Aventus Advisors, available on their website and through the link on the BV Wire article, shows software as a service multiples and growth both trending downward into 2026. The firm's SaaS index, which surged during the pandemic, has declined sharply in recent months, falling 14% year to date as of March 2026, amid shifting investor sentiment and concerns over AI disruption. So the median enterprise value to revenue multiples for listed SaaS companies have dropped from something like 30 times to maybe 3.4 times. So this is pretty significant drop. In the private markets, and this was focused a lot on public markets, right? But in the private markets, multiples appear more stable. The numbers were interesting, though. Across 543 SaaS M&A transactions since 2015, median valuations stand at 4.5 times revenue and 23 times EBITDA. So interesting. New EBSA guidelines signal a safer landscape. Daniel Aronowitz, who was recently confirmed with great relief, we talked about that, as Assistant Secretary of Labor and head of EBSA, directed enforcement staff to focus on the most egregious conduct and significant harm, with a particular emphasis on breaches of the duty of loyalty rather than second-guessing fiduciary process decisions. For ESOP cases, the memo is especially notable in stressing fairness and clear notice, including a directive that valuation-related investigations must align closely with established law or guidance until EBSA issues formal standards for determining fair market value in ESOP transactions. This reflects a broader cooling of enforcement activity. But the author adds that since private plaintiffs continue to bring ESOP cases, the threat is still real. But without the DOL stirring the pot, the landscape is much safer. All right, final article. 280E relief emerges for cannabis firms. Good news. Recent federal action to move certain marijuana products to Schedule 3 status will allow some businesses to now deduct ordinary and necessary expenses, potentially improving normalized earnings, cash flow, tax affecting assumptions in valuation models. But wait, there's more. It appears that rescheduling may apply narrowly, particularly only to certain medical or FDA-aligned cannabis products, rather than uniformly across the broader industry. That raises the prospect of a bifurcated landscape in which some operators benefit from 280E relief while others remain unable to take deductions for federal tax purposes. The valuation date, therefore, is always important, but especially important here, as the relief is expected to apply prospectively, not retroactively. So align the valuation dates and projection periods with regulatory timeline. All right. Further complexity may arise, so we're going to keep an eye on this one going forward. But that is your update for this month. Links, as always, are in the back of the slideshow, and I will pass it back to you guys.
Thank you, Janae. And for everyone else, you have your polling questions as every month. And now we are going to leave Dimitri Yimga, and he is going to be interviewing Greg Endicott, and they are going to be talking about valuation in this AI era. At the end of the show, we are also going to be talking about AI. So this is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you,
from
Alina.
here, Dimitri.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being with us today. I don't see Greg.
We go.
Oh,
There we
yep,
go.
Greg's here. And we are here today with our guest, Greg Endicott. I hope I pronounced it right, Greg. And Greg is the managing director of Strategic Value Group LLC, where he has advised clients on valuation and financial reporting matters since 2004. His work spans business valuation, compensation valuation, and multidisciplinary engagements across industry, including healthcare, technology, real estate, and manufacturing. He's also the founder and president of Value Vision, a Microsoft partner developing valuation workflow solution, combining 30 years of valuation leadership with over 10 years of SaaS innovation. Greg offers a forward-looking perspective on how artificial intelligence is transforming compliance, efficiency, and client service in the valuation profession. Greg, welcome. And
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're here to talk about valuation in the era of AI towards a new professional paradigm. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to try to do our best. So Greg, for valuators who have heard AI is going to change everything, for 2 years now, what's actually different about AI today versus 18 months ago, and why does it matter specifically for our profession?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of answers to that, but I think one of the answers is that everyone needs to understand how fast this technology is moving. It's moving at an exponential pace. So everything we've had in our careers, typically, even when the internet came out, I mean, it took a while to get things in there. I mean, AI compounds on itself. And so, for example, if you say 18 months, 2 years ago, I mean, I think OpenAI had just released o1, which was the first reasoning model. And they're like 10 to 12 models beyond that now. And that doesn't count the significant developments that Anthropic and the other foundation providers have made. So it's exponential growth. I think just this year, in the last, say, 3 months or so, one of the things that's been particularly, I think, interesting for us as valuators is that that technology is now moving into the spreadsheets. And so, if for those of you who have been working with AI for quite some time, I remember, I mean, it's been like 4 years now. When the first thing we tried to do was, hey, let's have it do a math check. Well, that didn't work out very well because it's an LLM. But they're now starting to move the technology and the agentic capability into spreadsheets. And so for the valuation profession, that's a huge step forward because we live in spreadsheets.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that was mentioned earlier in the update, the SaaS market valuations, I mean, that tells you a lot. When Anthropic introduced the spreadsheet capability, a lot of the financial analysts and things like that, a lot of those stocks took a hit because there was that perception that, oh, hey, all these software companies that have built up these platforms, can people eventually just recreate those in a different way with using AI? So I think that, I think it's hugely impactful for our profession.
Yeah, that's true. I've tried Copilot in Excel and also Cloud as well, and it's just pretty great. So, what's a piece of conventional wisdom about AI evaluation that you think is just wrong?
Actually, I'll pick two actually quickly. I think, and I think the first one is kind of slowly going away as there's more training out there and as people are getting more acclimated to using it. But, for a while, people would say, oh, I put in a prompt and the AI didn't give me the right answer, or it hallucinated. It doesn't work. It's the wrong model, or it doesn't work. And I think that the thing to leave with everyone is that we're just getting started with this technology. I mean, we are in the very minor infancy um, of this technology. And so there's a lot of things that can impact the ability to actually get usable outputs out of AI other than a model. I'm not, the model's one piece, but even within a model, the variations that you have, the settings, the instructions, the knowledge sources that the model has access to, the tools. So there's a whole host of things that go into the ability to translate some sort of an input, which is, a prompt input, and
Yeah.
get an output that is usable for us, in the valuation profession. So I think that's one thing. And then the second thing is, I think, is a larger issue, which is, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, we went through this when Excel got created, and we went through it when the internet came out, and so on. Those were huge advancements for our profession, but
Hmm.
I think that this is even more than that, because this
I think so
is,
too.
yeah, this is ubiquitous. So this is, it doesn't even impact value. It also impacts practice management. It impacts mark. I mean, it literally impacts everything. And the difference is, for example, when Excel came out, or when the internet came out, mostly Excel, but even the internet, what did it do? It allowed us to do things faster, better, more precise, and so on. It helped automate certain things and leverage
Hmm.
our capabilities. Well, AI does that, but it does even more. So it allows us to do certain things, like provide certain types of analysis that really historically hadn't been economically feasible to do. So there's a lot of different things. And the second thing is it grows exponentially. So while we're on this session, AI is developing, and new features are coming out. So those are the two things I think of on that question, Dimitri.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been amazed on how fast things are going because, like you say, from just in 2006, 26, sorry, let's say Claude or OpenAI, how the update have been coming out fast and they've been just evolving and evolving and evolving. That's really amazing. So you've been building AI-powered valuation infrastructure for years. What was the moment when you stopped thinking, this is interesting, and started thinking, this changed the profession?
Yeah, it's funny because in some of the discussions I've had and presentations with, or being on panels with other individuals who have been deep in AI, we always talk about this epiphany moment, which I think is what you're getting to in terms of your question. But this epiphany moment where all of a sudden it just occurs to you, when you can kind of get that visual ahead, and you can say, "Oh boy, this is going to be a big deal." And
Mhm,
for me, I think it was, when GPT-3.5 came out, started working with it right away. And I was like, oh, this is great. You type in something, and you get an answer back. But back then, there were a lot of hallucinations. The
yeah.
capability of the models was maybe like a high school type student, like in terms of the benchmarks. And so I was like, oh yeah, this will save a little bit of time, and so on. And then about 3 months into it, or 4 months, I don't know, maybe a year into it, I read a paper from an AI futurist. I think his name was Leonardo Aschenbrenner, and he was an OpenAI researcher. And I think he was like 25 years old or something. He was one of these prodigies that graduated from college when he was like 18 or something. But he wrote a paper called Situational Awareness that was a futurist paper. And I
Wow.
read that, and that's when I said, "Oh wow, this is." And if you read some of those, and there might be some others out there, but that one really, that was my epiphany moment, because I said, "Okay," then I truly understood what I was
Mhm,
looking at right now was just the minor beginning of what it was going to be. And so for
mhm.
me, that was the moment.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's, I mean, I don't think that there's any stopping it. I think from now on, it's just going to go exponential. So if AI handles more of the analytical production, what does professional judgments actually look like 5 years from now? And what skills become more valuable, not less?
Well, that's a great question too. I think what we have to think about in the valuation profession is, at the end of the day, we're providing a service, and we're providing, we're solving clients' needs.
Right.
And so whether that's risk management, whether that's dispute resolution, whatever that is, financial reporting, we're in place as trusted advisors to help them solve problems. Um, and we have standards, right? So we have
Mhm,
standards to do that, and so the professional judgment is hugely important. But I do think, in terms of your question, I do think that the scope of professional judgment and the depth and where it's important is going to change over the coming years, because what AI is going to do is it's going to leverage a lot of things. It's going to provide additional aspects of analyses that maybe we haven't seen before. It's also going to create a lot of leverage for people, and so leverage is great when things are going when you're doing something you want to be doing and the quality's there. Leverage is great, but if you're not doing something where the quality is good, leverage can be bad, right? Because it's a
exactly.
double-edged sword. So I think in terms of what skills will become more valuable, I think a couple things. Number one, you need to have AI fluency. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be an expert in coding or how to write, 10-page prompts or whatever. I'm not saying that, but you need to understand enough about AI and how it works so that that informs you when you're reviewing things, because we have to have human review on any, I always say that if you delegated a task or a piece of a project or a full project to a coworker, and they came back to you, you would still review it, right? I mean,
Correct.
if you're the signing appraiser, you still have to review it. So it's not a situation where you can say, well, we don't need to review that because AI did it, at least for right now. So I think that the skills that become more valuable are an ability to have a basic understanding of AI, so that when you're getting AI, when you're reviewing AI output, and when you're reviewing, okay, well, what exactly did we do? How did we get to this output? That you're informed, and so you can do that. I think the other thing is that it's really more of kind of like AI kind of oversight in terms of, again, understanding how things are being done, where they're coming from, and ultimately, as we move from a individual, like, submit a prompt, get an answer, to a more agentic framework where you're going to have, okay, well, we're going to do a market industry research, and then we're going to have a separate agent that does regulatory research, and then a separate agent that does, maybe looks at the MD&A and the comps or things like that, qualitative, and then you synthesize that, then you have another agent that synthesizes that. So what happens then is you have this kind of compounding effect, and if something is wrong at the beginning, then it just kind of adds that throughout the process. So I think understanding how the AI is working and how a particular framework is working is important. And one last thing to say about that is, we always use and I've been using it, this term AI, like it's some ubiquitous, like it's the same thing to all of us. Well, it's not, right? Because
Correct.
it's an overwhelming technology, but maybe you have some sort of a setup and you're using, Claude, or I'm using Copilot, whatever it is. And depending upon the prompts, the scaffolding, the instructions, all those types of things, we can be getting totally different answers. So all of that, I think, is very important. And I think that the takeaway there is that AI literacy becomes mandatory for us as valuators.
Yeah, I agree with you. So pretty much what you're saying is kind of like when Excel came along. Well, at the beginning, most likely people looked at it a little foreign and whatnot, and then it became something indispensable for our profession, for all the numbers and all the analysis. But this one is a little different. So you're getting like a support staff, kind of. So you pretty much there to guide the work and review, and it help you be more efficient in a way, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's, again, it's not, there's different pieces of it, right? So in some cases, depending on the use case, yes,
Yes, yes,
it allows you to be more efficient for an activity that we're already doing. But
yes.
then again, it also, and one of the differences is it allows us to do things, it will allow us to do things that we haven't really been able to do, either not necessarily because it wasn't like we didn't know how to do it technically, but that maybe economically it just wasn't feasible to do on a
Feasible. Yeah,
project.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, I can talk about this the whole day. But so of all the AI risk evaluators talk about confidentiality, bias, hallucinations, IP, audits, audit trail, supervision. Which one do you think the profession is underestimating and which one is overhyped?
I think the overhyped one is the hallucinations. And
Mhm,
I don't want to minimize that because hallucinations are extremely problematic when they happen.
mhm,
As evidenced, you can look at some of our tangential professional fields like law.
yeah.
We've all seen the we've all seen the news reports of the attorneys that walk into court and cite, cases that don't exist. There's been big four firms, which I won't name, but big four firms that have issued reports and they've had to retract those reports because of the reports contained hallucinations. So I'm not minimizing the concept of hallucinations at all,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is that if if the AI infrastructure is set up properly, and if the review processes are in place, you really shouldn't be having much of that at this stage with
Yeah.
the stage of development of the models and so on. And so I think that one is still getting some, and again, it's super important and it's something that's mandatory, but it's still getting kind of I guess, speakerphone
Mhm.
versus really because I do believe that it's mostly preventable, if
Yeah.
if
I
you
mean,
have the proper systems in
sorry
place.
for cutting you, but don't you think, and you said that earlier, if there's monitoring and the professional is actually really reviewing, monitoring the work, that should reduce those things from happening?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you think about it, we have our professional standards and our,
Mhm.
what we do, we have to review it. We're responsible for everything, right?
Exactly.
That doesn't matter how it was done. It doesn't matter whether we downloaded downloaded something into a market template from CapIQ or FactSet or whatever. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter whether we reviewed it ourselves or someone else did it. When we're signing an opinion, we are responsible for that. So I think that's the important thing is that we're responsible for that. And I think that if you look at some of these, I mean, like if you just take, for example, those, the hallucinations in the reports or the court cases that were
Hmm.
submitted, I mean, honestly, if someone just, had the AI make sure that it had fully workable URL links, someone went
Correct.
through and looked at that, reviewed
Hmm.
it, made sure it was legitimate, correlated it with their knowledge, that really shouldn't be happening.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
really shouldn't be happening. So, I think that's one. As far as what I think the profession is underestimating, I think the issue there is that, as people get into AI, and especially now with the current models, if you go into a current frontier model and you type in something like, I want industry research on this, or I want to do that,
Hmm.
it's incredibly powerful,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredibly powerful, and it can sometimes just blow you away. You're like, wow. I was in a meeting on Friday, and we started talking about synergies and difference between buyer specifics, financial synergies and strategic buyer synergies and things like that. And literally, like in 20 seconds, I created a 10-page primer on this. But again, it's in the details, right? Okay, where did it
Hmm.
come from? Does it make sense? But I think the one thing that we might be underestimating is we are now going to be moving to a place where we really have to be very careful about disseminating through information, because getting information and generating volume is not going to be an issue anymore. What's going to be an
Yes.
issue is what is relevant, like how accurate is it, how relevant is it, what is the context, and so on. And so I think that in conjunction with everyone, everyone needs to understand that it's not just typing in a prompt. And I think that it's
Hmm.
going to take some time for these systems, what I call kind of architectural scaffolding around AI, whether it's done by a third party or whether you try to do it yourself. But it's going to take some time to create the infrastructure around these capabilities so that you're adhering to the standards, you're adhering to your workflow that you need to adhere to, you're really minimizing or addressing the issues of the confidentiality, bias, and those types of things.
Thank you, Greg. Again, this is a big topic. The good thing is Greg will be presenting today later. I'm in Alaska time, so I don't know exactly the time. Alina will most likely help with that. But he will be presenting today. I encourage everyone to go and participate in the presentation. There's also another class coming up on June 15th on discount rate for lost profit. Why so many difference? And then there's another one on July 20th, engagement letters, agreement letters. Yeah. So thank you again, Greg. I appreciate it. Great topic. I really wish we had way more time.
Yeah.
And thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dimitri, and thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Really quick, let me just go back. As Dimitri mentioned, we do have the AVW in-depth webinars that are coming up. Greg will be presenting later on today, elaborating on this same topic that they discussed. And then again on June 15th, we have discount rates for lost profits, why so many differing rates, and then July 20th, engagement agreement letter. So if you would like to join any of those webinars, please scan the QR code there, or feel free to visit nacv.com/AVW-in-depth for more information and information about how to register. I also wanted to just take a quick moment to let everybody know that our conference is coming up on October 1st to the 2nd in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's going to be held at the Hyatt Regency this year. If you are interested in joining us in person or virtual, we're offering $300 off for early registration up until May 31st. So if you are planning to join us, feel free to register now and take advantage of that $300 discount. And with that, I'm going to turn the time back over to Mel, who will get us started with the next segment.
All right. Thank you, Chinna. I'll be there in Salt Lake. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see y'all there. So this next session, we're going to continue the conversation around AI because it's huge. But how do the standards apply? And James Ewart is going to spend some time giving us his perspective on standards when using AI and similar technologies. So James, are you with us?
I'm here. Thank you, Mel.
All right, my friend, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you so much. And Johnny, we can go to the next slide if you'd like. This is the topic of the year and probably the century, frankly. And I found that last segment that Greg and Dimitri discussed just incredibly on point, and I'm excited about the webinar that's going to follow AVW today. I thought Greg had some particularly pointed observations and points that kind of lead back to what my article was about that I authored, that was published in the Association News first quarter 2026, and it was titled "Follow the Standards When Using AI and Similar Technologies." And what Greg was talking about there was, if we follow the standards and do what we're supposed to do and what we have been doing for years, we're going to be using AI and these tools to one, benefit our practices, provide I think a superior product than what we're currently and have been. It's going to enhance our capabilities. And there are various standards, right? Business valuations, practitioners operate under more than one authoritative standard and professional framework. And as a result of that, I thought it might be appropriate just to take a moment to sit back and take a look at our NACVA standards and how they may be applicable to AI and similar technologies. Next slide, please. It doesn't appear that NACVA is going to modify the standards to address these tools, but rather the approach that's being taken is to provide guidance through interpretation of the existing standards in the use of this technology. And the purpose of my article was to reinforce the need for continued conscious efforts to comply the NACVA standards when using these slides. I think first of all, though, we need to just step back and let's make one very broad. Next slide, please. statement, and that is, these tools are just that. They're tools. They are not substitutes for our independent evaluation professional judgment. It's exactly the points that Greg just made and will be making in his presentation following AVW today. The NACVA preamble states that the standards apply to all member credential designees. That's all of us that are members of NACVA, and it's in the general standards, and those apply to all work that we do as members of NACVA. So that would be from the valuation side of the house as well as forensic engagements. Next slides. The general standard 2A states that we shall remain objective, maintain professional integrity, shall not knowingly misrepresent facts or subrogate judgment to others, our judgment to others. Exactly the point that Greg was just making. General Standard 2C states that we must exercise due professional care in the performance of our services, including completing sufficient research and obtaining adequate documentation. Again, echoed exactly what Greg was talking about. We just cannot accept what comes out of these models. We must understand what they do, how they get to where they get to, and what was the basis upon which conclusions were being reached. All things that we do today, and all contained in the NACVA standards. Next slide. General Standard 2F states that we shall obtain sufficient relevant data to afford a reasonable basis for conclusions, recommendations, or positions. Again, highlighted sufficient relevant data. We're going to be covering that in a panel, I believe in the fall at the conference that's going to discuss sufficient relevant data in a little bit more depth. Thus, we cannot blindly accept the outputs without employing professional judgment and relating the output to the facts of the engagement. So similar again to what Greg just talked about. We can take the outputs, we need to understand how they got there, what they're based on, but then we need to make sure there's a relation effect to what those outputs represent to the facts of our specific case, and how do they apply to the conclusions that we're representing. The next slide, please. And then regarding the inputs of these tools, NACVA Standard 2G states that we, unless required to do so by competent legal authority, shall not disclose any confidential information to a third party without first obtaining the express consent of the client. Pretty obvious that we need to take steps to ensure that the confidentiality of the kind of information is being respected. And there's some recent cases, and we're going to talk about 3 here in a minute. I'm going to reference 3 that are in an article that talk about this kind of information, and what at the time these cases, what the tool was saying with respect to the confidentiality of the information that was being used by it to improve its ability to understand the machine learning side of the house, which meant there really wasn't any confidentiality. So there were some real issues there from NACVA standard that we need to ensure that the information that we're providing to these tools is being respectful of what our standards require regarding confidentiality, and that it's being protected. Next slide, please. So with these standards in mind, then, my article addresses a hypothetical example of what not to do. Now, I will say the example is an extreme situation for purposes of relating the standards to the flaw shown in the example. I'm not going to get into the example, but it is rather extreme situation, and how the standards would apply to it. The article concludes with a list of NACVA resources that are available to train and guide us through this maze, and we're going to talk about those. The article also addresses some ethical considerations that should also be considered when using these tools. If there is insufficient consideration of the outputs and its relation to the subject interest, holding the work out as our own may be an ethical issue. That is, we haven't done our homework. We really haven't done the work. We haven't used the staff as was just referred to, the tool being the staff in the proper manner. We provided them information. We got outputs from them, but did we do our work in, one, guiding them to start with, and then two, reviewing what it was? But nonetheless, just taking and accepting what that work product was and holding it out as our own could very well be an ethical question. If we are doing such things, then we could be very well misleading the client or other identified parties that may use our reports and that would be relying on our evaluations. That just, to me, smacks of ethical issues. Next slide, please. So with respect then to the resources that are available, and there are just many with NACVA. The first of which is there's an advisory brief. It's dated in October of 2024, and it talks about the use of artificial intelligence in machine learning. It clarifies the role of professional judgment when engaging in AI and ML technologies. Now, clarification is probably not the right description here. It's mandatory that our professional judgment must be employed when engaged in AI and ML technologies. The brief also advocates for a thoughtful integration of AI and machine learning within the frameworks of our professional valuation and/or forensic practices. It's an excellent primer, and it's a resource that I think we all should read when we're dealing with this. This is this is the new world, and we need to understand the new world. So the next slide, please. Next resource that I've identified within NACVA is the FAQs, and there's a broader list of FAQs related to the standards and ethics, and within that, then there is pulled out of that general body of knowledge those that are subject matter with respect to AI and the use of AI. And those are very well put together as well. We have CPE on demand webinar. There's a myriad of them. Some are 90, good many of them are 90 minutes or more. And they're put together for purposes of assisting our practices, the models, and the personnel and personal management. And they're practical, and have practical tips on how and to use AI and to obtain and use the information in financial forensics. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that list and go through those and access what they can access. Next slide, please. I think the hallmark of what the forefront in the leadership role that NACVA has taken here in this whole thing is AI boot camp. And to quote the phrase that relates to this is, where experts go to upgrade their skills. This is a comprehensive, hands-on, roll up the sleeves, dive into AI use and its implementation. The instructors are skilled in the use of AI and have relevant experience and impart their wisdom on what they've learned so far and share that with us. And it's a very comprehensive program that I think is 3 or 4 days long, or 4 or 5 days long, actually, and well, very well worth looking into. New to NACVA is the AIMLC Commission. It's the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Commission. I think this commission is just a little over, maybe almost 2 years now. And its mission is to synthesize the extensive AI knowledge base into clear, practical guidance, aiding the boards of NACVA and the constituency, us as the members, in integrating AI innovations into their valuation and litigation practices in a professional and ethical manner. That is quite a mouthful of what this commission is doing. They meet, I believe, at least quarterly. And again, many of the people that have been instrumental in developing the boot camp are also instrumental in this Artificial Intelligence Commission. And of course, our NACVA standards. So the last slide I have then is just to summarize things. We need to be smart while we're implementing and using these tools in our practice. I think we have a great opportunity this afternoon to listen to Greg and the wisdom that he has to share with us. I would encourage everyone again to take the time to spend with him this afternoon. Remember, these tools are just that. They do not take the place of our professional judgment and our exercise of due professional care. I mean, if we just simply follow our standards through this process, we will be, one, in compliance with standards, but two, we will also have a much better and informed and product of what we are generating. And then we also need to be mindful of safeguarding our client information. This is one that's incredibly important. Although I didn't cover this in my article, there is another, I think, an excellent article that was in the current edition. It was in the current edition of Quick Read, and it related to 3 recent cases. And this article is worthy of reading, and certainly these 3 cases are worthy of reading. The article is entitled AI Work Product and Rule 26 it related to 3 cases. Beware of your AI queries. They may not be protected. The 3 cases that are referenced are Werner versus Gilbraco, the United States versus Hepner, and Morgan versus V2X. Again, I would encourage you to look into those. The discoverable, what is thought-provoking with respect to these cases is what may be discoverable related to the use of these tools. I will say there is no clear answer, given the myriad of circumstances in which these tools can be employed in our practices. But there are some pretty, I think, clear guidelines as to how they may or may not be protected, depending on the circumstances. What is of foremost importance in these cases, though, is that, as I stated in talking through with the standards, we must document their use. This includes, how and why they are used, for what purpose, and when during the engagement. And what I mean by when during the engagement, it can be, I'll use a very, I think, black and white example. If we are in the consulting phase of a litigation engagement, there may be one set of protections that are afforded us. And then if we are in the expert stage of a case, it may be a totally different kettle of fish using the same tool. So we need to be thinking about those aspects of things in our professional practices and in what stage of litigation, for example, we are in and how we're employing these tools and keeping in mind what may be needed in order to maintain those protections. So with that, Mel, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. Hey, thanks, James. Sorry, before we get move on to the next segment, I just want to go a few additional items. First, and continue with the AI topics. We have the AI bootcamp coming up. So if you do want to gain some more knowledge on the AI topics, we do have an in-person session coming up in the next month. So June 8th and 9th in Salt Lake City, Utah. We also have a virtual one in August 25th and 28th. So if you're interested in that, scan the QR code that's at the bottom of that screen right there, or visit us at nacv.com/AI bootcamp. And in addition to that, we do have the 30 under 30 nomination form is currently up until the end of the month. So if you have, if you're working with anybody who's under the age of 30 who has succeeded in the industry and the profession, feel free to nominate them. Submit your nomination by clicking on that link there or scan the QR code that's at the bottom of the screen. And with that, we'll turn the time over to Alina, who's going to start with the next segment.
Thank you, Chanda. And now we are going to pass to our next segment, the ones that everyone enjoys. We have Alan Zipp with us and Judge Megan Adams. She was with us for the first time the last month, so it's great to having her back. And they are going to be talking about what motivates the judges to join us and teach us all those things that we need to learn. So, and that we appreciate so much. So, Alan, you can take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Alina. And we have two judges with us today. We've lost Judge Yates and Judge Platt for today. My name's Alan Zipp, and Judge Adams is with us from Delaware, and Judge Driscoll, who always picks on me, and I'll pick on him today. The issue, the question today, it's not a technical question like ordinarily, and I'm trying to share my screen, and I have no idea what I am doing.
Alan, we can see it. If you want to hit the from current slide, that should change it. So go over one left, right there.
Got it. Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you so much. I was asked to ask the judges, what motivates you to help us as valuators and analysts when we provide testimony in court? And I outlined a few specific questions. Let me just skip over the background and bios. And let me just kind of open it up, and I want to pick on Judge Adams a lot today because she's brand new and doesn't know to pick on me. Judge Driscoll does. But you share your knowledge with us, your advice, your assistance on this webinar, the Around the Valuation World, and at the annual conferences, and then other programs of NACVA. You take a lot of your time to help us. You've provided really incredible information. You make us better at what we do. How does that help you? What motivates you to do this and help us?
Sure. I don't know if Judge Driscoll is on here today, so you may just be stuck with me for this entire time, but that will be fine with me.
Great.
And I'm happy to participate. Like you said, this is my second time, and I've enjoyed just kind of being on mute here these first couple times and taking it all in. You know, we're so used to hearing from lawyers all the time and attending legal conferences, but for me, you know, I went to business school. I have a degree in basically general business, but I worked for a year in accounting and finance before going to law school. So I have some familiarity with that. But a big part of my job as a lawyer, as a corporate litigator, was dealing with experts, preparing them for depositions, defending them in depositions, taking expert depositions. And now, as a trial court judge, I preside over the complex commercial litigation division in the Superior Court, which is the counterpart to the Court of Chancery. Everybody here, I'm sure, knows about the Court of Chancery, and I heard you talking a little bit about management projections in the Court of Chancery before. But for those of you who may not be aware of what we do in Superior Court, we are the Court of General Jurisdiction, but there's 5 of us that are on this complex commercial litigation division, and it's basically business disputes worth $1 million or more, and they're basically treated like Court of Chancery matters. And in fact, we have been cross-designated for the past 2 years to preside over Court of Chancery matters. So if somebody files in Chancery and it's a specific type of dispute, mostly post-closing disputes or earnouts, they could be assigned a Superior Court judge to be sitting as a vice chancellor. So I'm dealing with this stuff every day, whether I'm sitting in a trial or I'm dealing with a motion in limine, to the lesser extent, trying to figure out if somebody raises an objection at a deposition, but we're here for that too. So I think for me, just sort of trying to observe it all and take it all in, it just like anything else you do, you have to be constantly learning. And I think that when Judge Yates and Judge Driscoll asked me if I was interested in being a part of it, I was like, absolutely yes, because the more I know, the better I can be at my job.
Wow, can you focus a little bit on our testimony in your courtroom, specifically when we do valuation work in shareholder disputes?
Sure.
The standard of value, and Delaware is notoriously great at explaining standard of value. And in fact, several of your cases have become national and they're being used in other jurisdictions for different purposes. And specifically, if you could talk a little bit about the fair value standard in measuring value of a business in contrast to the fair market value, which is different. I would love to hear your insight to that.
I don't deal with that so much. I have to admit, I don't deal so much with that. That's more of those sort of chancery specific type cases that you would be really, I think, dealing with those types of disputes. I handle probably more of a post-closing contractual dispute. So there's a lot of times there's like a specific way to measure damages in a contract. And so I'm doing that a lot more. There's earn out cases that we've started handling from the Court of Chancery. So I'm handling those types of cases. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but I'm not quite able to answer your question, I think, just because it's not exactly what I'm doing every day.
Do you get involved in motions in limine to preclude an expert? And what do you look at when you rule on that to exclude an expert? What do we have to do wrong?
So I think there's a little bit of a misconception that's up until recently with the standard of what the Daubert standard, especially in a bench trial. Most of our cases in Delaware involve bench trials without juries. I think people have thought over the years that, hey, that's something for the jury. It goes to the weight, and it can be determined on cross-examination. Our Supreme Court has followed the trend of basically saying, we really have to serve more of a gatekeeper role in that Daubert motion in limine area. In our case in Delaware, it's pretty easy to remember. It's called In re Zantac litigation. And Justice LaGros, who was actually formerly on Superior Court with me, wrote a really great opinion about it. And in there, she does not differentiate between here's the standard in a jury trial, here's the standard in a bench trial. So the signal to me, and I believe other trial court judges, has been, look, I'm not inviting motion practice, but I am going to take these motions very seriously, and I'm going to take a hard look at them. I think something that is a little bit hard when people give me a cold motion without actually bringing the expert in to maybe do some testimony in terms of the Daubert hearing. I think it would be really helpful for me because a lot of times you're just seeing these motion lemonade Daubert motions out of context, and I'm just sort of like given a very little bit about the background, and I don't have the expert there to ask questions to or see some testimony, and I think that would be really helpful to have some of that. But otherwise, yeah, I've issued some decisions recently where I have cited Zantac and said, look, this is not going to fly in terms of me, and in some cases have really gone paragraph by paragraph in the expert report about what comes in and what doesn't come in. So I think the experts should really be mindful that even if it is a bench trial, there is a possibility that some of your expert report could be excluded at trial, and to keep that in mind when you're drafting your expert reports, and take a look at those recent decisions, especially if your judge has written decisions about it. What is he or she looking at in terms of those Daubert motions in limine, and in a jury trial, whether it's a jury trial or bench trial, I'm certainly going to be looking at it the same way.
Thank you. If we use generally accepted valuation standards, well established,
Yes.
and the issue is whether we're credible in I guess, the application of those standards. Will you allow that to go to trial and get the testimony and then decide, rather than exclude us from the beginning and not have that opportunity?
Yes, and I think
Alan, a critical part of your question.
Go
though,
ahead, Judge. Oh, here he is. Judge Driscoll's here. Yeah.
See, I know. I told you he'd pick on me. He's there.
Okay. No, does the expert have the education or experience? That's the first factor in
Right.
702A. So
Right.
I'm presuming by your question that the expert is qualified by education or experience or both. Because that really is a threshold question. And that ties into the point that Judge Adams made, which is as she's doing the paragraph by paragraph review that we all are doing, we in Daubert states are all doing, and yeah, we in Fry states like me in New York are still doing. One of the things we are looking at is this the right person to give that opinion? So not only is the opinion grounded in an appropriate methodology and an application of methodology to facts, and did the expert have facts, B, C, and D of 702, but also what are the expert's qualifications? So I think that's important. And the lesson I would give to all of our experts is don't be something you're not. If you've got an expertise in a certain area and retaining counsel asks you to go outside of that area, there is the risk that you do not have the education or experience to satisfy the trial judge in her gatekeeper role, which is very important, whether it's in re Zantac, whether it's Rule 702, or even in a Daubert state, to have that level of experience or education to give the opinions that you want to give.
You see, that is exactly what you guys are doing for us. You're giving us these tips, this advice, this assistance. You've been doing it for years. And Judge Adams, I hope you stay with us for years. I want to flip over a little bit to the American College of Business Court Judges. Can you tell us about it? What is the purpose? Who does it serve? And I know, Judge Adams, you are current vice president of the American College of Business Court Judges. We'll talk about
not only a
that.
vice president, but also gave an extensive lecture and wonderful lecture on the history of business courts in Delaware to the entire group of the American College of Business Court Judges. And truth be told, Judge Adams was amazing, off the charts, amazing. So
thank you.
If anybody wants to get that speech, it is that good. It is worth reading. It was even better to have it in person. So I'm sorry, Judge Adams.
Thank you. I was so grateful to be able to do that. I'm obviously very proud of having lived in this state my entire life and practiced in the courts, and now being a judge here, of the history that we have and strong presence we have in the corporate world. But Judge Driscoll is a former president of the American College of Business Court Judges, and he's the one that got me into it. But I will talk a little bit about the background. It's business court judges from all over the country. Part of my speech at the last ACBCJ meeting was the fact that it was the 20th anniversary. And like Judge Driscoll said, I kind of went through the background of business courts all throughout the country. But what we have is an annual meeting of 2 days of presentations of recent developments from business and corporate litigation. It's run by the Law and Economics Center at George Mason University, so there's definitely an economic focus to it. But many of the judges that come to these meetings are what I would call lone wolves in their jurisdiction and the only ones handling these types of business disputes. Unlike Judge Driscoll and I, who are very fortunate to have colleagues, whether down the hall or that we can just pick up a phone because we know that we've known them for a really long time, handling these types of disputes. So coming together at this conference is really helpful to those individuals to be able to share ideas and connect with other business court judges or their people that are dealing with these same types of issues. So it's been a really great thing for me. Every time I go to that meeting, I find that the programming is exceptional, and I always take something back from it.
Does it
Yeah, our
include-
our last programming included again, all kinds of current issues, whether it's trade secrets, things we're doing. We've dealt with Bitcoin and blockchain. We've dealt with the rise of AI. So we're trying to stay on the cutting edge. And as Judge Adams said, the best part are the relationships that are formed, because when things come up, or even if you're at the conference and you want to hear about something you've been thinking about, just sharing it over a glass of wine or in between meetings is so valuable, just to get other judges' perspectives and best practices.
Are you sharing this knowledge with non-business court judges, or are they only the members of that organization?
So you have to have a docket that is at least 50% business cases, and to come to the meetings, you have to, at least at the time of the meeting, make a commitment that you'll be serving on a court for another 3 years. Now, of course, things happen, and sometimes judges retire in that period. But those are the criteria. So it's not. I do exclusively business court cases, as does Judge Adams. That's not the case with most of the attendees. So I think right away, Alan, there's a group of folks who would like to even do more business cases and are hopefully learning from those of us who do it exclusively.
Can we, as just outsiders, can we see things that the American College of Business Court Judges produces, or like Judge Adams' speech? Could we see that? Is that available to us?
I may
So
be
we're like the
publishing it.
College
I
of
may be
Cardinals,
publishing it in
right?
a law journal, so that may be coming out
Yeah.
soon.
But short of that, we are the College of Cardinals. Like once we say extra omnes and
Yeah.
everybody else out, and that's so important. And it's really so important, actually, that if I have a question that I might think is a dumb question, I might not ask it if there are non-judges in the room. And the odds are, if I'm asking it, probably someone else is thinking it also. And that's not just because I've got great questions, just because we're all kind of in that same realm. We're generalists. Even if we're specialists in the business court community, we are generalists. We don't know as much as you know. So our questions are sometimes might not sound like the greatest question, but it's a question we've got to ask. So yes, the output, like Judge Adams's remarks, I would commend them to you upon her publication.
Is there any way we can participate, like as a guest speaker or something to the group?
But that's a great, and I'm gonna. This is where the old guard and the new guard will now meet on this. Yes, with an asterisk. So our funding is largely controlled by the Law and Economics Center at George Mason University, the Scalia School of Law, and so the president who hosts the meeting has to be very gentle in requesting the participation of outside entities. So when I was president, I asked an academic to talk about a potential treatise that he was thinking about for model rules for business disputes. And he came in, he lectured, he was wonderful. It was very academic and not very doctrinaire. Our conferences tend to be somewhat doctrinaire. The Scalia Law School is known for having a more of a law and economics bent, which was traditionally known as a conservative way of thinking. I don't know if you could say that or not, but that was a thought, right? So it is very much an economics oriented thinking. rather than really a practical way of thinking. It's really at 30,000 feet, right, Meg? Right, Judge Adams? Is that
Absolutely.
a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, how can we benefit, or is there a way we can benefit other than what we're doing right now through your participation with NACVA? Does it help us in any way?
I think there may be a value in perhaps a one-off, whether it's a Zoom meeting or if we could bring you to one of our annual meeting to speak. That latter part is a little harder. The one-off Zoom meeting is a little easier to do, but also harder in that we're not necessarily all in the same room. We did try to do a lecture series a couple of years ago, and it didn't really succeed, not because of the quality of the presentation. They were spectacular, but I think timing was everything. We were all Zoomed out at that point. So this is 2021. And we were Zoomed out for a commitment to more than a one-off, an annual presentation of things that judges should be thinking about. There was a series of 3 or 4 presentations in a year, I think one each quarter. And I think that was just too much. So I'd suggest that if the brain trust at NACVA is thinking about, again, moving forward with this, it would be an annual, lunch and learn type of presentation. And, I think we'd have a fair number of attendees. I hope we would.
Does the American Bar Association have any influence over the American College of Business Court Judges?
Well, Alan, you're asking the hard questions. I mean, these are large P political questions. So I'm going to really stop talking. Right, Judge Adams.
I think that I was just going to say, when you were asking, is there ways to get involved? And I agree with Judge Driscoll, that because of the funding, we are sort of limited to what we can sort of recommend in terms of programming. But for the American Bar Association, the window just closed for the fall meeting in terms of recommending programming. But I would suggest we have very few, there's maybe one person that I can think of that's really a valuation guy that's not a lawyer that regularly attends our meetings. But I think it's sort of a wide open market to attend these meetings in the fall and the spring. We typically have one in April, business law section meeting in April, and one in September. The one in September is in Chicago. The one next spring, I think, is in Washington, D.C., right, Tim?
Yes, ma'am.
And
no, I'm sorry. The spring is in Vegas.
Vegas, I'm sorry. Even better, Vegas. So those are, maybe there's some way, because we're always looking for programming idea, and there's maybe some way in our next thinking about programming, not for the fall, but for next spring, of merging together some of the discussions. I know there was a really big discussion earlier before we started about AI, and AI, anything related to AI is going to be huge at these conferences. So if there's a way for us to merge stuff that you all are talking about with stuff that we're interested in, I think that may be a great programming. And I'm the chair of the Judges Initiative, so I get to sort of promote and think about ideas for programming. And I would love to talk to some of you after this call. We have a group of us that are trying to think of programming ideas, so maybe we can brainstorm a little bit about it. And I think that might be a better way to get involved. But a lot of the judges that are involved in the ABA business law section are also involved with the ACBCJ. So that's sort of the crossover in terms of that.
And I love that idea of AI. One of the great programs we did in my state for our annual meeting of the commercial and federal litigation section was where lawyers were educating judges on how they were using AI. So Megan, I can imagine something where experts are presenting to us as part of a panel, probably not an entire panel, but how they are using AI. So how are business valuation experts using AI beyond just writing reports? And it could just be just writing reports, but perhaps of an hour and a half program, perhaps 20 to 30 minutes of the valuation expert talking about how she might be using AI in her practice.
And I think that would be great for the lawyers that are there and the judges to be learning about that, because like we've talked about a lot, Tim, we're constantly going to be, I think it hasn't happened to me yet, but I can imagine a motion limine or a Daubert motion discussing the use of AI in an expert report and how do we handle that, and how does that get in front of a jury and all those types of things.
Well, how can you get that information to us? That's that's helpful. We need to know.
Well, why don't we talk afterwards about I have, like I said, I have my co-chair and somebody else who's helping me with programming ideas, and we can try to figure out a time to meet and
That'd be
figure out some
great.
programming ideas.
I want to put some people on the spot here that aren't here.
Okay.
Isn't it true? That's a leading question. Isn't it true that past presidents of the American College of Business Court Judges include Judge Driscoll, Judge Platt, and Judge Yates, and now Judge Adams is the current vice president? Would you all want to accomplish when you sought that post? That put all of you
Well,
there. Go
For
ahead.
me, it was involving folks outside of the academy at the Scalia Law School, or again, similar. I wanted to get beyond just the law professor speaking to us, and I wanted to get a little bit more of a practical how we should be handling things. And so one of the things that I am proud to have accomplished is one of our panels is the judges panel, and it's the last panel of the conference. And we put it together, we provide the panelists, and we provide the agenda. And it's as I said, it's the last panel of a 3-day conference. And it's a nice way for judges to be talking about some of the things that we are facing to other judges and share some best practices. We had a Daubert panel a couple of years ago with Judge Adams, myself, a dear friend of ours from Rhode Island, and Judge Yates. And man, it was great.
It was great.
It was just great. We just all learned so much from each other.
I would have loved to have been.
So come to Vegas, Alan. Come to Vegas. Apparently Vegas in May is beautiful.
I'll go anywhere to talk with you guys.
All right.
I'm trying to, get a rapport with Judge Adams where she won't pick on me like you do, but I'm wearing a red tie and a blue shirt because of Judge Driscoll.
Well, make sure you wear Carolina blue when you're around me. Then we can get along just fine.
Oh,
I'm wearing Carolina blue to impress Judge Adams. So and Carolina.
Can I get commitments out of all the judges on the panel today that will you continue to provide NACVA members with guidance, tips, and advice into the future? Will you do that? Stick with us.
We're free that day.
That's
We're
right.
free that day.
Can you give us some ideas? What can we do as practitioners to learn more about really on what we do in the courtroom as expert witnesses? We're trying to provide testimony, and we're getting thrown out 47% of the time that a Daubert motion is made. It excludes partially or fully the expert witness. And that's a study done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And it's getting serious these days. What can we do as practitioners without going to law school?
So one of the things, and this isn't an endorsement, it's just something I was so privileged to be part of. Michael Kaplan's expert witness boot camp was off the charts awesome. And that was me as a faculty member saying it was off the charts awesome. I learned so much just watching Kaplan in action, and experts, these are experts from all over the country, were presenting in front of a panel. I played the part of the judge, and Kaplan was the coach saying, hey, could you change that analysis? Can you change that analysis? So I think practice makes perfect. And to continue to commit to trying to be better, not just in the theoretical realm, but actually practicing your presentation skills.
Well, he's going to make a sandwich for us at the conference this year. Judge Adams, you're going to, what do you see in the future for you? Are you going to be a president of the American College?
I hope so. I think I've got about 2 or 3 more years, and then we'll be bringing the conference to Delaware or the Philadelphia area, whatever they choose. But my goal in getting involved in it was a different perspective, right? I grew up here. I'm a Delaware girl. I talk to Delaware judges all the time and Delaware lawyers, and I wanted to kind of see what was going on around the country with my colleagues from around the country. So that's been great for me. And like I said, I learned everything at every conference that I've been to. This has been only my second time participating. This has been a great learning experience for me. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in Salt Lake City in October and going to that. So I know that's going to be a wonderful thing for me. And I really, part of what I like to do is I like to sit and observe and listen. So, and sort of absorb the information. I'm not always kind of the kind of person that jumps in and asks questions right away. So for me, it's just been really interesting to kind of see the issues that are facing you and how that affects what's happening in my courtroom. So definitely my participation is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Thank you very, very much. Is there anything we as NACVA members can do for you to show our appreciation for all your many years of guidance and advice?
Laugh at our jokes.
Yeah.
I'll
That's
do it.
important to me. But seriously, keep tuning in, because I learned something just by that. I didn't tune in early today, but when I tune in 10 to 20 minutes early and I hear Mel talking about something, I'm like, man, that's pretty good. So keep being you, and we'll
Yep.
keep being us.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Mel, I'm back. You take over.
Awesome. Thank you for that. This was so good. So good. And Michael Kaplan, are you on?
I am on. And that was a great presentation by our judges. That is the perfect lead-in to what I am going to be talking about. I have learned so much from our judges over the years, and I have had the privilege of working with our judges beginning. Actually, the first time I met Judge Yates was in February of 2007. I'm sorry, Judge Platt was in February of 2007. I started working with Judge Yates and Judge Platt at the National Judicial College in programs that we presented. This was back in 2013, and we ran that program for a number of years. That was the Complex Commercial Cases program. And then we moved on to the programs that we had done for the American College of Business Court Judges. We had a number of courses that we put together and we have available. And one of the things that I have found is I have gotten so much feedback presenting those programs, being a presenter, being on the panel, so much feedback from the judges. And some of them are very, very small type comments or questions that have really changed the way my mind thinks when I am preparing a case, when I'm preparing to go into the courtroom. I will give you an example. There was a program, I believe it was in New Jersey, and this was a question that was received by one of the other instructors, by Dermot O'Neill. May he rest in peace. Dermot O'Neill was asked the question by one of the judges, I don't understand this. How can two experts walk into my courtroom? Highly educated experts, multi-credentialed experts, many, many years of experience in doing their work professionally and in the legal environment. And one walks in with a valuation of $3.7 million, and the other one walks in with a valuation of $40 million. And both of them had the same evidence, used the same methodology. How do they do that? And it's something that we see in our field, but when I hear the judges ask questions about it, I know the judges are listening, and it puts me in a position where I say, when I do my work, what can I be doing? What evidence can I position appropriately? What is it that needs to be highlighted? What is it that the judges are understanding and embracing without my help, without my input? And what additional things can I be doing? And I will tell you, every time I get up in front of the judges, I learn something new. I learn something new that just makes me a better professional. And I believe that my colleagues who have who have also participated in the programs feel the same way and have experienced the same thing. I'm just going to do a little bit of a commercial announcement, and that is, at the upcoming conference in October, the upcoming the national conference, we are doing a presentation, and I am leading the judges panel on when an expert's testimony goes south. Is it homicide on the part of hiring counsel, or is it suicide on the part of the expert witness? And I will tell you, over the years, I've seen evidence on both sides, and I've kind of compiled my thoughts and my observations about that. And we are going to have our judges run with it, and we're going to learn quite a bit. So come the conference, please join us. And I see Judge Driscoll nodding, and that is just great.
It sounds like a little bit like Dateline meets Valuation.
You've got it. You've got it. We will see you there, Mel.
I will be there, man.
Great.
Thank you.
Always great. The presentations with the judges and all of the work that Michael does with them. I mean, I've known Mike for a long time, and every time he puts a program in, it's entertaining, it's informative. So if you can get there, get there. So, all right, we're going to move to our next presentation with Charles Persing. We're going to talk about the updates of the NACVA standards and some things that we need to be aware of coming through. Charles is a CPA, a CFF, a CRIRA, CBA, CFE. He's got all the credentials and part of the standards board. So, Charles, you here with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, man. I will let you take it away, my friend.
All righty. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the AI and the standards. We put out a response to the Appraisal Standards Board's new guidance, new advisory opinion 41. But I do want to say I thank Mr. Kaplan for mentioning a former partner of mine, Dermot O'Neill, a great guy, and it's always nice to think about people who've gone. And another partner of ours, Chuck London, who some of you may know, was also a valuation partner. And anyway, I am finishing up my second term as a board member. First one was on the ethics board and the standards board, and surrounded by a number of great people. So I think in terms of technical ability and work and whatnot, you're talking to the last guy, and it seems like I may be the last guy for today's program. But everything's about AI these days. I share Mr. Kaplan's remarks about how two valuation guys can go into a court and have a wide difference. I assure you, AI is not going to change that. That is going to be something that AI is going to not affect. And I'm also want to thank the numerous professionals so far who have not used the tools that AI provides well. It provides us with a roadmap of where not to go. So that's where we start off. This morning I went on to my mail server and I keep a lot of emails, and I did a search for AI. And in the last year, I had 1,000 emails that referenced AI. So AI is here. In any event, I agree with the previous people who talked about AI. I believe our standards and other organizations' standards provide enough guidance without having special AI standards, although I think they're also needed. We talk about supervising work, ethical and whatnot, and some of the AI blunders that the law firms and whatnot have used in the past were just because they didn't follow their standards. Supervising work, doing all the things, the quality control things that you need to do when you get out a report. So I will say that a revisit to the standards may make sense, but I think AI is looked at maybe as a end output as opposed to another tool to come up with a report. So technology can never replace the appraiser, and I'm going to start talking about the 41. I think NACVA's response basically came down to the fact that ethical violations are not contingent upon intent, but if you carelessly use or negligently use uh, your tools, you're ultimately going to be in a position where you're getting it in trouble, and you will violate some of the standards, including ethics. And I think that was NACVA's response, the second response to this advisory opinion. I think the key themes are technology. Because I did two things, by the way, before in preparing for this. I summarized the what's the name, the advisory opinion, and then I went on and had AI summarized it. And in this case, they did a better job than me. So I wanted to point that out, that the technology used right may make sense. I had a list of things that I thought I would mention about it, and I compared it to what AI said, and I refined what my output is today in terms of what I'm going to talk about. But um, technology, again, as I said, is never replaces the valuation expert, the appraiser, whatever you want to call it. I believe that the source of the technology does not change the appraiser's responsibility for ethics, competency, the scope of work, the reporting, the confidentiality, regardless of what technology you use. Um, um, just because AI spits it out, that you don't slap it into the letterhead and sign it at the bottom. You've got to decide how to use that work. Again, these are themes you heard. I was in the radio business for a brief time, and they say by the third time you heard something, it may stick. So I'm number 3 today talking about AI. So some of the things I'm talking about hopefully will stick with you, and they will. They did change in this um, um, advisory opinion. They did change and clarified intentionally to avoid confusion with the ethics rules. So that was a change that they've made. Um, Tools alone, I think, don't comply with anyone's standards. Use PAPs are ours. The appraisers need to understand it, and how it works, and what level of reliability they can put on it. Now, this weekend I was at a college event, and one of my friends, I've known almost 50 years now. I went to school when I was about 3 years old, but has a firm that does um, um, stock option awards and values those. And he was talking about how he was using AI to help with some of the variations in terms of formulas and approaches that they use. He's got some PhDs. They do the coding. They do all that sort of work. And he was describing how they bulletproof some of the stuff, and some of the results. And he told a little story that AI got him 75% there, and then they did additional work and refined what AI had told them. And I asked him, how do you document that? What are you doing? Do you disclose it? How are you making sure that you save your prompts and keep information confidential and are asking the right questions? And he was a little bit taken back. He goes, "Well, I don't disclose my tools, and you know, we bulletproof the work, so we don't necessarily feel that we need to disclose that we used AI. So I put that out to you because I think one of our prior presenters talked about whether what you use in AI is protected, and you need to document that, or you even need to disclose it. So I just think that you know, when you're using AI, you should document what you're doing. Let me just jump ahead because I know I'm running running out of time already. I can't believe that. Uh, I spent some time in the bankruptcy world, and some of the courts that my associates and colleagues work in, some of the judges are requiring the lawyers to disclose whether they use AI or not. And I think that if you're doing it right, whether you disclose it or not, in the long run won't be a problem. I actually think you should put something in your retention letters that you may use AI, so you don't have you don't run up a fail of your clients and whatnot. Let me see. Let me just jump ahead. Hold on, I'm moving ahead because I don't want to. The one thing that that this advisory opinion is that they're considering retiring their opinion 18 and 37. One was on automated valuation models, and one was the computer assisted valuation tools. And that after reading those, I think that makes sense. I think this kind of puts it all in one place. But I wanted to note that there may be those two other changes. Again, I think their advisory opinion, technology is helpful, appraisers, valuations, they remain responsible to be competent, ethical, skeptical, and transparent. And so I think that using the outputs cannot substitute appraiser judgment. And just think about what Mr. Kaplan said about two appraisers coming up with widely different numbers. Well, that's based on the differences in judgments. You know, he's right in many cases that, you know, the information that the appraisers get is identical or close to identical. So really, it all comes down to our professional judgment, our competency, and in many cases, our quality control. I will say that a favorite movement of mine, which was the Imitation Game, Alan Turing actually came out with his first um, AI kind of you know, machines can do intelligence and whatnot. You know, we look at AI today and how we've graduated over the years. You know, from spell check to Lotus to all the things we do, GPS. AI has really come a long way. You think about all the groups that are actually coming to look at AI. There's at least 12 organizations that have come up with standards on AI. You know, and I think there's some comparison on the standards: accountability, fairness, transparency, privacy, and safety. Um, you know, those things come in terms of all the principles that come across all these organizations. I tracked down 11 or 12 of them that have come up with the new standards based on AI. So I think as an industry and as professionals, we're coming along in the right direction, trying to harness the tools that AI is going to give us. And, you know, 5 years from now, you know, we're going to weed out the lesser AI products, and we're going to hopefully learn how to use them a little better. I think I'm out of time. I don't know, Mel, am I out of time right now?
You still have 1 minute.
1 minute. Well, again, you know, I will say that there's many types of AI, and I think you can use the various types. Just remember what you're using them for, whether it's got to be closed systems, whether whether you can reach out to various sources without knowing all of them, or whether you need to have a limited system. I think the choice of the AI tool is going to be more important as time goes on because we're having large variations of those. Just look at the stock market and how many AI companies are out there doing work in terms of the chips and the various programs. So AI is here to stay, and I'm glad that NACVA is jumping in with the teaching valuation experts how to successfully use AI and stay out of the pitfalls that some of these earlier adapters may have gotten into. So I thank you for listening, and I look forward to more of these things. And even though this is my last month on the board, I am still going to be following NACVA and coming to these events. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. It was great having you today. And yes, as you mentioned, NACVA is very interested in teaching all of us about AI. So we have our AI Commission. So our next presenter, he is part of the AI Commission, and I think he is the most passionate person that I know about AI. And it's interesting because we started the show talking about AI for business valuation experts, and now Colin is going to talk about how to use agents as part of your business valuation and your practice so you can grow it without needing to recruit more people. So Colin, remember, we are mere mortals, so be aware of that when you're talking about, because I know I know you. So
Yes, you do.
You can continue. It's great having you with us today.
Thank you, Alina. So I only have 15 minutes, so I thought I would just dive in and show you some things you may not be aware of that are available out there using the actual AI tools. So I'm going to show two agents. So this is actually the topic came from a presentation I did back in the last conference we had. And if I were to give that presentation today, it would have to be completely rewritten. So in any case, obviously AI is advancing very, very rapidly. The models are getting so good. What I thought I would do is show you maybe something you haven't seen before so that you can see what it's capable of doing today. It has really gotten even better, even in the last week. It gets better every week. So it's not like we wait a month. It's like weekly we get something new that's been launched. But here's one I thought I'd show. I'm going to show two agent tools. Now, an agent is slightly different than what you may see in your normal chat. So if I were to click on your normal chat, you'd ask it a question, would give you a response. Well, agents, actually, you give it goals and you tell it what you'd like it to do. And then it creates its own plan and sends multiple AI agents out there to accomplish that task. So in this case, I'm going to show Perplexity Computer. Now, Perplexity, you may not have heard of it, but it's been an AI model that used the web and was the best model for the web. Well, they've gone ahead and added the ability for you to choose any AI model. So you can actually, so if you just take a look down here, you'll see it says ChatGPT 5.5. I could also choose Claude from this same, just from its own interface. So that's kind of a nice feature. You can use this, one tool to use multiple models. And today, I'm just not going to pull any punches. Claude has the best model. If you're not using Claude, you probably need to look into it. So in any case, that's for another day. I would say that this is the Perplexity Pro version. You can do a Google search really quick and just search Perplexity Pro free. and you'll come up with a whole bunch of locations where you can probably find it. They've got partners where they've, with PayPal and with Venmo, and you just have to sign up. They'll give you a free account, the pro version, which is kind of nice. And when you do that, you'll want to sign up and get the, just do a search and say Perplexity Computer. It's actually a desktop app. So this is a desktop app. This is not in the browser. And you can actually give it tasks. So for example, since we're talking about how you could use this maybe for your own practice, I did a couple here. I did a CPA lead generation outreach. And if you take a look and see the simplicity of my prompts, you'll find out that, man, anyone could do this. And what it did is it went out. I just said, you're an AI research and outreach assistant. And I just told it to go out and find CPAs in the St. George area that does not have a website. And it went out, did the research. So these are all potential clients for me, because if they don't have a website, they probably need one. And it found the contact information, everything. It then went ahead. Now this is all an agent. So it's not a simple request. It's doing multiple things. It's doing everything it thinks that I need to be able to contact these people. So it not only did that, it created a CSV that I could download and upload into my CRM or into Excel. And then it also created, created tags that I could load into my CRM. It does all kinds of stuff. In addition to that, it actually created some email drafts. So it created 6 personalized emails that I could send to these people. And they're actually personalized. And they set it up to put into my customized mail system. So one of many tools. Another one I've done that's quite amazing is I told it, so I did this, I'm one of the presenters at the AI Bootcamp, and I told it, one of the guys said, hey, what if we did this? So look at this simple prompt. Now, this is an agent doing this. This is not chat, so you're going to get different results. But build a standardized private company valuation model in Excel based on Demoteran's methodology. And guess what it did? You can see all the things it did. It did a whole bunch of things. And eventually it created this amazing, I would have to open that up, but we don't have time to do that. But this created all these instructions. It created a dashboard. Okay, yeah, actually, I guess I can show it here. It gives company inputs, historical financials, normalizations. I'm not saying that you're going to go out and you're going to use this. You already have all your models, but this might be another way to maybe re-visualize the way you do your models and come up with a different way of doing things. So it could definitely be beneficial that way. So that's one of the agents. I said I would do 2. The other one, the other thing that's nice about agents is you can actually customize them and you can connect them to other tools that you have. You've got skills. If you look at skills, wow, there's so many things. You can simply type in slash, data exploration, and it will actually, there's a skill already built that they've built, and it will go out and it will analyze the data that you have loaded. So very cool. But here's the one that if you're not using, you should be using. I've done tests. If you go out and look at my quick reads, this model continues to beat out all the other models. It's a very good model. It gives results like you wouldn't believe. And in any case, this is Claude, and this is the desktop version. This only works on the desktop. So if you're using Claude.ai in the browser, you will not see what I'm seeing here. As long as you're on a paid account, you'll be able to see this. I'm only using, in this case, the pro account, and this gives you access to what we call co-work. So this is your standard chat, just like you would see with ChatGPT or Copilot or any other AI tool. But co-work gives you the ability to have agents. And these agents, it will fire up multiple agents that will go out and do, whether it's research or analyze data or whatever. Very, very powerful. You can see that here's an example of some skills that have been already created. You can just here's an example. You can go slash, and then you can see all the different things that are already built. And you can just sit there and type in pretty much anything you want there. You could type in, you'll notice if you do have this, Claude, and you're having a paid account, you can set this up in Excel. And Claude in Excel is absolutely killing it. Unlike Copilot, which gives a little bit of hallucination or just it's just not as clean. You'll get better results than you will get in ChatGPT if you upload the file. This is actually working inside Excel and loading in the Excel or the Claude plugin. So super powerful. A couple of things you might want to know about what you can do. The reason this co-work is, some people are nervous. I'm telling you right now, the people who are going to win in the future are the people who are getting trained and learning about AI now. It's not like, okay, this is something in the future. It's not going away. It's only going to get more powerful. This is the worst it's ever going to be right today. And so just so you know, with that being said, the nice thing about co-work, it allows you to work on your local computer. I want you to think about why that is a little bit different than what you're used to. So I can actually, first of all, I can actually attach it, and I can set up, I can customize it with a whole bunch of things. So I can actually connect apps, and I'll give you some examples of why that might be cool. Guess what I just found out? We've got an IBIS world. Let me, if I can type here. There we go. There's an IBIS world connection to Claude. And this would allow you have to log in with your account, so you have to have a paid account with IBIS World. But in any case, you could then ask it any kind of question, and it's going to go out, analyze data, and come back with a report that will knock you off your socks. But you can set up, there's plugins that are all set up for marketing and data and sales and finance and anything you can think of, they have already set up. So these are not things you have to learn how to do. These are plugins that you can just utilize that have been developed and are already going to be super helpful. And then you can create your own skills. I mentioned that you can do these, you can hit slash skill creator. You can create your own skills. You can do pretty much anything you want there. So it's mostly about letting you know that agents, it used to be a super technical thing early on, and agents they've made it so easy. That's actually, you're going to see everyone using agents to do all their work, basically. And it's basically having an employee or an intern that you can send off, and they will go out and learn what you do. I can train this specifically on my what I do on my workflow, how I do things. And then what I do is I'll actually set up a folder. So there you can see I've got one for NACVA. And it will go out, it will read all the files and all the training that I've given it. And then it will just, I can load up a project into there, and it will take off and complete the project. It's absolutely amazing. With that, I know we're out of time. Wish I had more. You'll notice I can probably talk for 2 hours, and I do talk for 2 hours. I do have a session that I've got going this Wednesday, and I am going to be showing you how to create calculators, dashboards, and assessments. And I know you're thinking, yeah, right. I'm just telling you, you are going to do it with me. We're going to create probably a DCF calculator. We'll probably create, do some dashboards with some income statements, balance sheets, and we'll do a BB readiness assessment. How would that be? Anyway, it's going to be awesome.
Colin, this is so good. Just from firsthand experience, y'all, he mentioned assessments. I built through AI a really deep dive diagnostic assessment with 16 personality profiles and everything. And it was not only the assessment, it was the programming for the pages were built, the emails, the reports, everything was done through AI. The power that we have at our hands is amazing. So this conversation is going to continue, and everything. So, all right, this was great. We have our whoops, I just dropped my mouse, but we have our next AVW coming next month, June 15th, 2026. If you want to be a guest or if you have a topic, do me a favor, reach out to Chinda at NACVA. And if you want to make sure that you're getting the continuing ed credits, make sure that you're registered to go through that. All right, so we will see you back here June 15th for the next program. You guys have a great beginning of summer.